So I am going to let our panelists introduce themselves. And I lob out the first kind of big question, which is, could the three of you give us a kind of, brief overview of kind of this time between your decision to either major or minor in art history and where you are today? Tell us what year you were, where you live now, a little bit about your job, and then we'll go from there. So let's start. I'll do it purely alphabetically. So let's start with Desi.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Desi Gonzalez. I'm based in Austin, Texas right now, and I was part of the class of 2010. I'm right now the director of product at a small startup called Verb, and the product that I lead the strategy and implementation for is a leadership development platform that helps turn people into kind of develop their leadership skills for themselves and for their teams. But I majored in art history and linguistics at Emory. And my early career, or most of my career, has really been in art museums. So right after graduating, I joined the Whitney Museum in their education department. One of the very first projects I got to do there was actually working on a website for kids to learn about the Whitney's collections. And that's when I sort of fell in love with using technology to make complex subject matter like contemporary art accessible to all sorts of audiences. So after a few years at the Whitney and at MoMA, I went to graduate school for a comparative media studies in this small little program at MIT. It was super interdisciplinary, but it gave me the opportunity to think about how you can use technology and apply it to lots of different fields. But I went back to art museums, worked at the Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh for 3 years, leading digital projects there. In 2018, I moved to Austin with my partner. At that moment, we were moving there for his graduate school, and there aren't a lot of museum opportunities in Austin. I moved to a place where my career was going to be in museums, but now I'm moving to a city where the biggest art museum is a university museum. It'd be like trying to find my dream career at the Michael C. Carlos Museum. Wonderful museum, but not a lot of jobs there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I then had to think about how I could shift my skill set for other fields. So I started looking at jobs in UX and sort of found my way into this role right now.
Wait, so tell us what UX means.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So for the uninitiated, which I was certainly when I was an undergrad. So the field of user experience, it really thinking about kind of how we interface with digital products. And sometimes it's applied a little more broadly just outside of digital. It might be the physical and the digital interacting together. Within UX, there are a lot of different roles. So you could be a designer, you could be a researcher. The role that I fell into I actually tried on all these different hats. I did a little bit of user research, and then I did a little bit of UX design, where I felt like the strong, or where I was being called to, is this weird role called a product manager, which kind of sits in the middle of designers, people who are writing content, the software developers, and you sort of kind of translate between the three to make it happen.
Excellent. Yeah. So there's going to be like a digital thread, I think, here. Okay. Alphabetically, Jennifer, I think, right? Next. Oh, and I should mention that the chat is just open. We're a small enough group, so please feel free if you have any questions, kind of in the interim, feel free to drop them into the chat, and we can either feather them in during our regular conversation, or we'll hold them to the end. But okay, Jennifer, or Jen, which do you prefer?
Jen or Jennifer, it doesn't matter. You can call me Jen though. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. My name is Jen Asheru. I am a video games producer currently, and I graduated Emory in 2014. Yes. So I majored in, I was a dual or joint major actually in art history and visual arts at the time. And then I minored in computer science. So my path between deciding to major in art history was an interesting one because I definitely went around the landscape of different majors at Emory. And once I landed on art history, I knew that I wanted to focus on like the digital aspect or like interactive media, but I didn't really know how to go about that. So that was the purpose of my computer science minor. And then I did a couple of internships, one at like a digital publishing company in New York. And then my senior year of college, I landed a QA internship at Cartoon Network. And QA is like quality insurance. So basically, I was testing video games all day in that internship, which is pretty cool. Which then led me to, I ended up staying at Cartoon Network and I got really into production. So I became an associate games producer there and worked on a lot of mobile games and web games for kids, which was fun for me because it was just, shows I had grown up watching. And then I kind of hit a wall like a few years after that role. I grew up. I grew up. I actually did kind of grow up there. I had braces when I first started at Cartoon Network, so I did kind of grow up there. But I grew from like going from QA to production assistant and then eventually associate producer. And I wanted to start working on console titles, so I wanted to start working on games that were more catered to adults and that were on Xbox and PlayStation and PC. So I started applying and I eventually landed my position currently, which is a producer. I'm a games producer at a company called Private Division. It's a subsidiary of of Take-Two Interactive, and we're label mates with Rockstar Games and 2K Games, if you're all familiar with that. And then I'm currently based in Seattle right now. But yeah, a little bit of what I do in my actual day-to-day job is I get to work with third-party game developers and help publish their games to larger markets. So I do a lot of production. I'm like a project manager, but I'm also kind of a creative project manager in the sense that I get to help support these indie developers and then help them hold the vision of their game while also helping provide like just time management and timelines and just cool things that we can hit for their game to be successful. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Thank you. It sounds, I've got two boys. It sounds like the dream job of probably, I don't know, a very high percentage of at least 14-year-old boys like behind me. Excellent. Thanks, Jen. And last but not least, Laura.
Hi. So I also graduated from Emory in 2010, and I was not an art history major. I was an art history minor, and my major was, I don't know if Emory still does the English/creative writing major, but that's what I was. And I don't think I really knew much about what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to write and had always been really interested in the intersection of creative writing and the visual arts. And I ended up going to graduate school right out of college. So I spent 4 more years in school at the University of Alabama. So I got my MFA in creative writing, specifically focusing on poetry, a little bit of creative nonfiction. And I kind of went into that experience thinking, okay, if you are a writer, then you can be a teacher, I guess. You can teach other people how to write. And quickly realized that that was a bad idea for me. And realized that I liked working with people in more of an arts administration capacity. So after 4 years in Alabama, I ended up moving back to the area where I grew up. So I live in Philadelphia right now. And I really lucked into this position at, I guess, technically it's a foundation. The Pew Center for Arts and Heritage, they fund basically like cultural activities in the 5-county area. And that was kind of my entryway into the art nonprofit world in Philadelphia, which with a minor detour into academic publishing is kind of where I have been ever since. I spent several years at a nonprofit called Mural Arts Philadelphia, which basically does a lot of community building through public art. If you've ever been to Philadelphia, you've probably seen a mural, and it was probably made by Mural Arts. And right now I work at a very small art and design college in the advancement department. So some of what I do is actually, you know, this type of alumni event, but more on the back end. Some of what I do involves annual giving, raising money for the annual fund, but in a surprise twist for you all, I'm actually going back to school in the fall. I'm going to be in the master's social work program at Bryn Mawr. So there are really a lot of things you can do with an art history background. And I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you all. So we have sort of a general view of you and your geographies and such. So I thought the questions that I have actually, I would say kind of like start on the Emory campus and then sort of ramify out. So the first question, sort of Emory campus related, that I think would be particularly interesting for the students at Emory right now. I'm curious what role, sort of beyond the classroom, so what role did extracurriculars, you know, second majors or minors, or even part-time jobs, let's say, help you kind of home in on what it is that you're good at and that you have ended up kind of bringing into your careers? And I'm happy to sort of pick one of you, or please just feel if you're so moved there.
I really like this question, so I might jump in. So extracurriculars and majors and second majors and minors, well, I didn't have a minor, I just had a second major, but they all had a huge part in my career. My second major was linguistics, and it's a social science, and the kind of skills I learned in that really directly relate to the kind of user research work that I've done in my career, and thinking about how what kind of human needs and behaviors are when they're interacting with digital interfaces. But in particular, like kind of extracurriculars and how they led me to museums. I was, for 1 year, I was a research assistant to Dr. Bonna Westcoat, and I got to work really early stage on the Samoth Race website project, which in retrospect, I'm like, oh, that's what I ended up doing, is bringing art history and technology together, and kind of using technology to teach people about art. And then finally, I did a lot of internships while at Emory, at various places. One at the Atlanta Contemporary Art Center, another one at the Whitney Museum. I did that between my sophomore and my junior years, and then I ended up getting hired there afterwards. So I think that internships helped me. Well, in that one case, it led to a job offer, which is pretty cool. But in other cases, it helped me see what kind of jobs there are at museums and figure out where I wanted to be within them.
I can hop in next. I think for me, it was they played like a really big deal for me. So I was a joint major in visual arts, and a big part of like I wanted to work in games, but you know Emory doesn't have it at the time, didn't have a game design program, so I really needed to figure out how to come up with a portfolio. And so that piece of my major really did help, and then my minor in computer science did as well. But agreed with Desi that internships were extremely helpful. My first internship at Emory was at a camp. I knew that I wanted to do like digital media, but I didn't know to what extent at the time. So I interned at a camp and I did like photography and film for them and just anything that was like creative that I could just start putting together again, like a portfolio. And then eventually, like with my computer science minor, I became like a web development intern for like a digital publishing company, and that also helped just putting more stuff in. I did a lot of graphic design for them as well too. I worked in the career center, and then I also worked in the Center for Women at the time, and I did a lot of graphic design for them. So anything that I could just do to help and do graphic design. I was also I did a lot of things now that I think about it. But I was in gospel choir at Emory, and I did their graphic design as well. And when I was applying for my internship at Cartoon Network, it was really competitive because a lot of they were honestly picking a lot of men from Georgia Tech, and like they all, were in this game design program and all had games that they were making, and I had to I was like scrambling for my portfolio and also trying to make little mini games, like trying to teach myself how to do these things. So it was just like a lot of research that I was doing and a lot of learning to be able to, compete and, and stuff like that. So when I did get my internship, it was great experience as well, and then thankfully led to a full-time role later on when it was time to graduate. So yeah.
Um,
Okay, there we go. I'm curious from all of you too. I mean, it sounds like this is a question that I might have if I were an undergrad right now. I mean, it sounds like, if you can manage to get yourself into an internship, you learn a lot of the skills that you end up kind of taking with you beyond, like on the job. So, they know you're a smart Emory student and that you can learn, and you say, yes, I know Photoshop, even if like, oh, maybe, right? But so, I mean, would you say that these internships, are kind of skill builders effectively in the end? Yeah.
yeah, I also ended up learning graphic design on the fly, not as part of an internship, but I did stuff with the literary journal at Emory all 4 years, and turns out no one told me when you become the editor you have to typeset the entire journal. So I had to learn InDesign really quickly. But yeah, I did that type of thing. I worked for the bookstore liaison's office all 4 years, which I don't know if that still exists at Emory anymore. We liaised between the bookstore and the college.
Yeah, now it's a website. The
That sounds
liaising.
bad. But yeah, I worked in that office and I learned a lot of skills around I think things that helped me when I got into like arts administration and communications and marketing. But yeah, I mean, I was very nearly a dance minor. I think there are a lot of really like abstract ways in which all of these things help me think about ways in which we're influenced by the environments around us, how space works. I could come up with some really like artsy ways of talking about it, but yeah, I really was all over the place, huh? But it helped. You would be really surprised, the things that you suddenly realize, oh, I know how to do that. I can do that. Do you need someone to do that? Like, I'll do it.
Okay, so on the heels of that, my next question, which is kind of actually rolls nicely out of what you were just talking about, Laura. So I wonder if you all could reflect a little bit on, and you've answered this like sort of in certain ways, but like what skills did a major or minor in art history specifically, um, uh, how were those skills useful, and And what aspects, what specific skills did you get in art history that you might not have gotten in another major or minor? And many of you, did multiple majors or minors. So so at any rate, why art history?
Um, for me, I just really I took my first art history 101 course, I think, with Dr. Dorothy Fletcher, and um, I just like was fascinated by everything. Like I like was fascinated by history, and then obviously like the art piece of it. So for me, I was really enjoying the research aspect of it. And then for the skills that I learned from my like, my art history major was that I feel like it taught me to look at things with an empathetic eye. And it's really, really critical for the job that I do now because even though it is like a lot of like, we're at the computer and stuff like that, I have to like interact with all kinds of different people, every single day. So like I really have to learn how to understand people, understand the development team that I'm working with, and apply empathy to the work that I'm doing. So it's taught me to look at things with an empathetic eye, and then also to just do research. Especially when I first started at my old job at Cartoon Network, a lot of my job was doing research, like on shows, on things that other competitive shows that were out there as well too, and then things that would just like make our games better as well too. So just kind of it taught me like a lot, just how to be, I would say, empathetic and well-rounded, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to plus one all of that. I found that art history was a super interdisciplinary major in many ways, in that different different professors had different approaches, but we were always thinking about the context around which an art object was made, and also just like drilling into messy and abstract ideas. Especially my focus was on modern and contemporary art. It really had me grapple with a lot of messy and abstract ideas, having me look really closely at an art object to understand it. I feel like those translate into skills that I use on the job now when one of my big things is leading strategy for my team at the company, which is really abstract ideas. And I have to be able to take abstract ideas about where the future of our product is going and communicate it to my team in a way to get everyone on board. And I think that kind of creative and critical thinking I developed through my art history major.
Yeah, I would say the same to all of that as well. I don't think I realized. I mean, I've only taken art history classes at 2 institutions in my life, so take this with a grain of salt. But the program at Emory just seems interdisciplinary in a really special way. I studied abroad and took art history at University College Dublin, and it really was the study of history of art. And we were just memorizing dates, and it just it didn't like capture me the same way at all. It was really it was really disappointing. But in classes at Emory, I felt like I was really asked to think really deeply about things, to be able to analyze anything, whether it was something really big, something really small. I also had art history 101 with Dr. Fletcher, who was awesome. And I still remember one of the assignments that we had, fall semester freshman year, was to go to the Carlos Museum and look at, I think she had specifically assigned us this, like, I think it was a Greek relief. It's probably still there, but I remember, she said you just have to describe it, and you have to use 1,000 words or something like that. And I got there and I was like, well, this is like a square piece of marble with like some people on it. How am I going to write 1,000 words on this thing? And it was such a lesson in like looking deeper. There's always more to see. There's texture and the way that things are positioned next to each other. How are they interacting visually? There's the way that maybe the fabric is draped really like indicates something that you should be thinking about. And I'm so sorry if you hear a cat noise. There's a cat here. Yeah, I actually think back to that assignment a lot. And, no matter what I do, whether it's, trying to tell the story of a nonprofit or hypothetically in the future, being a clinical social worker, I think being able to look deeper and know that there's always something more to think about really came from art history.
Beautiful. We're gonna have to like capture some of this and like put it on the website or something. We'll talk to you guys before. um, but so I guess let's sort of like move on a little bit to your place that you are currently, and this is a question that I think would be is certainly on the minds of students who are further along, juniors, seniors, certainly. So what do people in your field look for in a student, in somebody who they might be hiring, who's coming in with a BA, right? So, I guess, our students, our sort of recent college graduates with BAs, being hired where you are, and, on the other side of the door, right? When the choices are being made, what are some of the things that you might sort of value or sort of, kind of talk about as a hirer?
Jen, do you really want to start? I don't mind. I feel like I'm always starting. So I'm going to break it up into two sort of sections. And one is sort of like, what are the behavioral qualities I'm looking for in a candidate, and how they're coming in versus like, what do you have on your resume or portfolio when you're coming into a role? And definitely like both in when I was working in museums and now that I'm working at a small software startup, I look for people who can learn quickly and they're not afraid of trying new things. People who can tolerate ambiguity but want to get to clarity, like make some sense out of like the ambiguity that's around all of them. And someone I really actually this one that I really think art history is great at doing is being able to see the big picture but also dive into the small details when you have to do that. So those are some of the things, like actually I'm trying to hire someone right now. And that's those are some qualities that I'm looking for in that candidate. In terms of, now in my current field, working at a small software company, definitely looking for people who have some past experience related to what we're working on, but it doesn't have to be like, I think one thing that can be feel paralyzing when you're looking for a job right out of a BA is you're like, I have 0 years of work experience because I was just in college, right? So that past experience can look like something else. And it could be something like your internships, your extracurriculars. I think portfolios, Jen, I love how you were talking about your portfolio and how you spent college, like building it up through by patching together different courses into something. Like I love when I see a candidate who has a portfolio or a website that takes me through the way they think through a problem. That gives me a sense of how they might think through the problems they would be doing on the job.
I thought that was fantastic. But yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, for me, like when I'm looking for someone we're hiring, like I think one of the biggest things is passion, and that is something like I feel like because like our history is so like there's multiple things you can learn. Like it's easy to become passionate about one field over like for one part of art history over the other, and so passion is something we look at a lot on my team, and then we also look for, are they a culture add? A lot of people say culture fit, but like that kind of the connotations of that is like it just kind of continues a culture that may be just like meh or whatever. So culture add is like hopefully someone can like more people join, and like the way that we think changes, and the team grows in the process of that as well too. And then on the more technical aspect of it, we do look for do they have project experience or portfolio? So even if like the person doesn't have a background in video games, like do they have a project that they've driven from like start to finish? Do they have something to show for basically? Just different things like that, like I really appreciate, like when I'm speaking to candidates, and again, like when we're interviewing too, like is just if when passion, a lot of times there are times where we have hired people because their passion shines through so much, like we hired them over the person who like their resume was just like on point to the job description. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, again, all of the above. I definitely have hired people who had less experience, who just, it was just so clear that they had so much hunger for what they would get to do in the role. And also, you don't want to hire somebody who doesn't seem jazzed about what they're going to be doing. I, I feel like I have been really surprised by being on the other side of job interviews and realizing how much of it can be, okay, we are interviewing all these people, clearly they have skills, clearly they know, X, Y, Z, but do I actually want to work with this person 40 hours a week? Are they kind? Are they, able to have a conversation? Do they understand nuance? But also, I think even if you don't have like a one-to-one translatable experience, having skills is such a big thing. And I went straight to grad school from undergrad, so I was that person entering the job market with a BA and an MFA and work experience that was not really in an office ever, and having to figure out how to get a job with that. I had internships, I had worked as a teacher while I was in graduate school, but I had never worked in a museum or worked for an independent nonprofit. So I definitely had a lot of anxiety about whether I was qualified for the roles I was applying for, would they even want to talk to me? And looking back now, I really see how much the skills that I had built up, whether it was in school or in internships, those were the things that mattered more so than whether I had a degree in arts administration. It's really, can you handle a project? Can you see the way that things fit together and get them from start to finish? So yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of repeating what both of you said, but same experience.
I mean, that's really helpful to hear, because you're coming from three different fields, but it seems like if you boil it all down, what I'm hearing you say is don't be too anxious about this problem when you're coming right out of college, which is that you have no on-the-job experience. Of course you don't, right? Because you've been a college student, and internships certainly help with that. but general kind of like can-do attitude and enthusiasm. And I mean, I'm sure being able to write matters too. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever ask for writing samples or anything like that, you know, when you're looking at people, but I would imagine,
A
you know,
lot.
writing sample, right, because the last thing you want to do when you're a boss is to oversee somebody whose texts you have to like edit down like to the nth degree, right? So so being able to really kind of articulate ideas succinctly and in a way that communicates, which you'd get in any humanities degree. But and I had never heard this like culture fit thing, but I really liked what you said, Jen, about the culture ad. You must be working at a good place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
that you're allowed to kind of think that way. It's really, really great.
Christina, can I add one thing also
Yeah, of
to
course.
what you're looking for when you're hiring? Maybe this is my bias as a hiring manager, but I actually, when I look to hire people, I really like the untraditional backgrounds. And there's, especially in my field of like where I'm right now in terms of like software design and UX, there's like some people who went to school for exactly that. Maybe they did graphic design or computer science or project management in school. But I find the people that came to this path more circuitously and like, you know, started somewhere but ended up finding this field, just to bring a richness that people who like studied it straight from the beginning maybe don't have always. So that, and you know, not every hiring manager is going to be me with the linguistics and art history background. So so take that with a grain of salt. But I think it's all about how you frame your degree and what you learned in it and how you apply that to the field you're looking to go into.
Yeah, that's really great. It's very good advice. Yeah, I mean, people with interesting kind of, I mean, weird, maybe even like, or a not straight path to. So they always just stand with at a cocktail party. That's for sure, right? And if you go back to this notion, as I think Laura mentioned, that you want to be working with somebody who is kind, right? Who can sort of think beyond exactly what it is, the task, you know, the task that you've given them, who can think kind of, you know, like outside of that and in creative ways. Like all of those things are really important. And knowing that you can sell that about yourself actually too, I think is worth knowing. Okay, so looking at the time, maybe I'll move on to sort of maybe slightly beyond. So we're sort of curious to hear, like, your job is not your life, hopefully, right? Entirely. So we're curious, just kind of, you know, how your experience at Emory Art History, but you can go beyond that, please do. Sort of has played in your life beyond your career, beyond the kind of 9 to 5, if you're lucky, you know, 8 to 7, if it's we're more realistic, like at the beginning of your career. So how have you know, how did the humanities or your major in art history just enriched your life?
I don't know if any of you have seen, this is a very specific example, but the movie Portrait of a Lady on Fire. But well, you should. It's so beautiful, and it it kind of blew my mind the way that it took this idea of looking and just spun it out through, you know, like filmography and the costuming and the way that the movie used sound and the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. And this is just one movie that I feel like I had an experience with that was really, really, really meaningful for me. And I never studied film. That's not my forte, but I feel like I was able to have an artistic experience that went beyond, well, I know it went beyond the people that I was watching it with, because we had this discussion afterward where I was like, oh, wow, didn't you see all the things? And they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. Please explain. But yeah, I think that's just a very specific moment. But, anytime you look at the world around you, whether it's an actual piece of art or just the way that the uh, objects on a street are arranged, I feel like I have an understanding of the way that we are shaped by this visual and spatial experience that just, happens every day. And definitely in my, I guess it's not really professional, but it's also not really in the realm of hobby, but, writing poetry, I feel like, it comes up in that all the time. Anyway, you should watch that movie. It's really great.
So the question is how studying art history in our time at Emory enriches our lives outside of work now, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So how is your life? Yeah. How is your life just kind of a richer experience for having kind of learned these things or been exposed, let's say, to some of these ideas or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was the person, like I actually, right before we got on this panel, Christina, you were telling us about how now Emory has a art history concentration with museum studies mixed in. And I was the undergrad in 2010 or before 2010 who really wanted that to exist, but it didn't exist for me. So I kind of made it happen for me by interning at museums and taking classes that would put me in the museum. Then I went into my career and I spent my first 7 years in museums, and I was like, growing up, museums that was the place where I wanted to be, and then I got to work in them, and that was amazing. It's also really amazing to like not have that be your job and the way you make your livelihood, right? And to separate something that you love so much from how you make money, because that can be stressful, and you really tie your identity a lot to your job, and there are things that are problematic with that as well. But I continue to love museums. It's been a hard year for me, not with the pandemic for many reasons, but including that I've been away from art in that sense. But I found other ways to, like, even though my career is now not in museums for various reasons, I've been able to like stay connected in different ways. I just wrapped up a 3-year term for working with MCN, which is the Museum Computer Network. It's a group of professionals, a nonprofit that's focused on professionals who use digital technologies in museums. And now I'm on the board of a local arts organization. So I try to remain connected in different ways like that.
I think for me, just having like a greater, I think similar to Laura, just like a greater appreciation for like the art around me. Like, I travel sometimes just specifically to go see specific, like not pieces, but more so architecture, I think. Like, and um, and also like I read a lot. Like, I feel like the pandemic is, brought on a new hobby. So like just even when I'm reading just like maybe a fiction text, maybe it's like, it's, it's coming from maybe like a Greek text or something like that, or like philosopher. So I'm like, I want to read that now. And like, it's just, I feel like art history is just like, it inspired that in me. Like I still have those, like that like just wanting to learn more. And then I guess aside from that, it's just a lot of the volunteer work that I do is more arts focused, and continues to be. So I think that definitely stems from my degree and just my time at Emory. So yeah.
That's great. yeah, I ended up being an architect, and now I'm not an architect, right? So I hear you, Desi, in a way, like from the time I was like little, I wanted to be an architect, and then I became one, and then I maybe didn't want to do that anymore. But the thing that was great actually about I was an architecture sort of studies undergrad, is that my family, I have enriched my family's travel experiences, right? Because exactly as you said, Jen, like I was like, read up, like, okay, these are the 4 buildings we need to see. And, and it just, like that kind of interest in kind of understanding the objects or the places of wherever you're going to be is a pretty great. Yes, art history major equals always the tour guide. Exactly. Which I sort of relish myself, but right. um, so excellent. So maybe let's see. I mean, you guys have talked about this a little bit, and I like really appreciate that that you have also, in addition to, let's say, work and leisure, you're also, it sounds like, also involved in the community in various ways, on boards or volunteer work, and that kind of stuff as well. And you've spoken about that a little bit. So feel free to speak more about it if you would like. But I think maybe I'll move on to these big questions. My ears will be perked here. What did you wish you had known while you were an Emory student?
I think for myself, like that there are so many classes at Emory, and like when you are a freshman or even like a junior or senior, like it seems like you really have to like stick to like your major requirements, but like your major you will complete those classes at some point. Like that is like usually a guarantee. But like it's really okay to explore and try different things, and also look for classes that you may not even know exist. So I found, for example, I found a 3D modeling course in the art history department. I took intro to CAD, and that helped with my portfolio. But this is even prior to me being an art history major, and I was just like, I just want to take this course because this looks like something I would do. And then I actually took a video game seminar in the film department, and as well too. And both of those courses, I did not have the intro courses that were needed to like fulfill the requirement. And I just had to. I ended up emailing both the professors to ask like and expressing my passion, like I'm really interested in this course. Can I please join it? I know that I'm like, I think for the intro to CAD class, I was too young to be in it, but I was like, I do all this graphic design already. And I was like, I really, really want to learn this. And, like, here's why you should add me to your class, like those kind of things. So like, even if, there's a class you really want to take and it seems like you need to take like intro course or something like that, like there are ways around it, especially if you just go and talk to the professor, or if you send them an email. So I think that is like one thing I wish I would have explored a bit more. Like you could take, there's all kinds of classes, like you take fencing, ballet, like don't be afraid to experiment. I changed my major in college 7 times, so like and it's like all in the background of this, like I knew that I wanted to do art and computers. But my parents, I'm first generation Nigerian. My parents really wanted me to be a pharmacist. So I was taking like chemistry freshman year. But all in the background of this, I'm taking like just art courses, not thinking about putting a major together. I'm just like, I just want to take drawing because it makes me feel good. And I was like, I like this art history course because I feel like I'm learning about something I care about, like, so all in the background of that, while I'm changing my major from like economics to math to computer science and like just different, just around like I said, the landscape of Emory majors. It's okay to experiment and and try something that that scares you, or that feels comfortable for you as well too. So for me, my comfort was like art made me happy, and I knew that, but I was scared to like just declare the major. So yeah, sorry, I know it was long-winded, but yeah.
How do your parents feel about where you ended up?
Oh, they love it now. Then it was just hilarious. I remember my dad, like, I told my mom, and she was not really pleased, but I didn't tell my dad. He got an email saying something like, "Congrats on your art history student." And he calls me and he's like, did you change your major? And I was just like, "Oh, yeah." And he's like, "So what are you going to do with that degree?" And I was like, "Don't worry, I'm figuring out." And this was like the summer before I got the web development internship I was talking about, which I ended up doing a lot of graphic design. And he just was like, "Okay, you better," and then clicked, and then just that was the end of that. So, but now, like, both my parents, they send me like video game articles all the time. Like, they're so into it now, but they were very nervous, like, because they didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't really understand what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to work in some type of interactive media. So, yeah. So.
That's awesome. I'm sure there are many people on the call who are like, yeah, my parents weren't that psyched about my major choice either. And look at me now. Awesome. What was the question? Oh, right. What did you wish you had known while you were an MA student?
I'll go next. Jen, I love your story, first of all. And I love how you just asked professors, like, can I take your class even though I don't have the prerequisites for it? That is really cool. And I love that your trust in yourself that you'd figure out where you were going, as long as you remained interested and engaged. So that's really cool. But something I wish I'd known is that as I mentioned, I like went into college loving museums and wanting to be in museums and working. I think I had like told my mom at some point in high school, like, I want to work at MoMA someday. And then I did it, which was kind of cool. But I, at that moment, thought that, like, if I was going to be an art history major, the jobs were to be a professor or to be a curator. And I didn't know that there were any other jobs out there. And for a long time, I was like, I'm going to be a curator. That's the one thing I'm going to be. And it's often thought of as like kind of the ideal or the most respected kind of job in the field. And I'm super glad I didn't become a curator. It turns out it's not what I wanted to be doing. I like working. I think if I'd gone that route, I'd be much more research focused. It'd be more solitary. I'd be working on the same project for years and years and years. Whereas right now, what I love is like working on many different things all at once, working really cross-functionally with a lot of people, making something and putting it out there in the world. I guess as a curator, you make an exhibition, but just the scale and the like slowness of it is something that I'm glad I didn't go into. So I guess what I wish I'd known was that there are more opportunities, both in museums, but also outside of museums, to like more ways that we can apply our knowledge and skill set.
Yeah, similarly, I think I had no idea the variety of positions that are out there, the variety of possibilities that you can explore. I thought, oh, I'm into writing, so I guess I'm going to teach writing. I had no idea. But yeah, I feel like there are a few things. I would say I wish I knew not only how okay it is, but I think how beneficial it is to be a little bit lost. I think it's like kind of wild that we enter college hypothetically, if you're at like a traditional college age, when you're 18 and you pick this major and maybe you change it 7 times or not, but the idea that by the time you graduate, like what you want to do with your career when you're 22, I think life is not so straightforward, and that wasn't a model that I really had at that time. I guess I would also say this is something that I'm still learning now at 32, but the thing that you do with your life, and this is kind of why I appreciate that we were talking about how art history, or the study of art history, it has enriched your life outside of your work. your work is not the scope of your entire life, and it shouldn't be. That's not good. It's not the only thing out there, and it's okay to not make that the central. I'm so sorry, my cats are fighting. I don't know if you can hear that. They really love each other, I promise. Yeah, it's okay for that to not be the entire focus of your life. And there was something else that I was going to say, and now they're fighting and I can't think of what it was. So I'll just stop there and mute myself.
You can come back with it if it comes to you. You can come back to it. So it's just turned to 7, and we can continue to talk about some of these things that I've got more questions, but I definitely want to leave a little bit of time for those of the undergrads who are there. Karen, Nicholas, Christopher, Elise, Francis, Jiaming, Yijin. If you guys have any sort of, don't be shy. We've got some pretty excellent alums here. So feel free to put it in the chat if you've got any questions, or to turn on your video and unmute yourself. And if you don't, that's okay too. All right, so I'll continue to ask a couple questions. You can turn on your camera and ask your questions or put in the chat. Yes. There was a question as part of the registration. Maybe I'll put that out there. Maybe it's from one of the students who's here. So the question was, is it competitive to find a job in an art-related field, and how do we prepare? That's a big question. I mean, and I think, in lots of ways you've already answered it, but I wonder if any of you here, I'll put it in the chat so you can look at it. There. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind when I read that is like what constitutes an art-related field. All of you have ended up in fields that we can say, oh, of course she was an art history major or minor, right? But because we know how the story unfolded. But you probably couldn't, when you were graduating in 2010 or 2014, have foreseen, right? Exactly how this would go. Oh, okay, right. So would you all consider yourselves to be in art-related fields? How about I ask the question that way?
Yes. And I think even when I'm in social work, I will still be in art-related fields.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
I would definitely consider it an art-related field, just because even though I don't work on art directly, I work with lots of artists, and I constantly have to give as part of my job, I have to give feedback on art and like games and just different aspects of the game. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call it. So I'm interested to know if the person who asked this question is here, is this what you meant by art-related field? And this is maybe getting like a little real talk right now, but I do see a thread between my role and art history, but I wouldn't call it an art-related field, my current role. But I was in museums until 2018 and have kind of consulted with museums a little bit since then. And I will say that if you're interested in the museum field right now, it is a hard time. And I don't mean to discourage people from applying. I just mean that museums have been shut down for a year and have had a lot of layoffs. Mm-hmm. So it is the reality is I was serving on the board of MCN, which is the art museum professionals working in technology. Their jobs haven't gone as much, but it's still been a kind of painful year because of so many jobs going away. So if people are looking for specifically museum field, that is it might be a little harder right now. So I would look into, if you're earlier in your career or in your undergrad degree, things might bounce back once the pandemic is kind of over and museums are reopened and kind of they're a little more financially stable. But if you're graduating right now, I would say, like, look at museums and other jobs.
Yeah, I mean, that's very good advice. And it's also, I think, like, if you're really interested in museums, to try to in a way, like, get your finger through research, by the way, right? To get your finger on the pulse of like, okay, how have museums, and maybe, like, does MCN have a website?
Yeah, MCN does have. So if you're interested in museum technology or something related,
Yeah, like,
or just because it's also people who are like educators in museums that want to use technology in their practice, communicators, like marketing and communications people who want to use it. It's not just strictly like I build the technology, and even sometimes curators who are interested in digital means to showcase art. So MCN, the website is mcn.edu. There's a really great listserv. There's a whole Slack channel or Slack instance for MCN. It's a really robust community that is always looking for like young professionals to come and learn too. So I would and then there are professional networks for all of the subfields within museums. So if you're interested in museum education, you can find that network. There's a really great Facebook group called Emerging Museum Professionals. If you do want to get into museum work, that's probably a really good entry point.
Okay. So MCN.
I'll write some in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I like the point that I wanted to make, that you have made better, is that museums won't disappear, but the jobs are scarce right now, and I think one of the things that we were talking about before everyone was invited in was like the specific historical moment that we are in right now is not the same as the Great Recession, that sort of ensued in 2008, and that Desi and Laura found themselves kind of on the job market, but still, when this was going on, a lot of like anxiety about kind of where careers would go and the like, and we're probably kind of in that place right now too, and a lot of fields figuring out like, what does a post-pandemic career in museums look like, right? But I'm sure there are a lot of people writing articles about it and thinking about it, and I mean, if you're interested in a particular career, like, poke around, right, and see like what are the paths that actually seem more open and interesting right now than the standard, like, whatever, curator, right? Like in-person curation, maybe online curating, like, I don't know, but at any rate, so MCN, okay, that's great, thank you for that. Sophia.
I have a question which is related to kind of where you were going, Christina. I would love to hear you all talk a little bit more about the role of networking and informational interviews in finding out about those opportunities and those pathways. I think that's something that is really crucial to that kind of career discernment, but it's often something that people don't want to do or are afraid of doing, or it's hard to muster up the courage to do it. So could you each talk about how you approach that and whether it's been a useful strategy for you in your own careers?
Definitely, I can start. That is such a good question. So since I've been young, I'm like very, very shy. It's really hard for me to just go out and just talk to groups of people. I know a lot of people also have this issue as well. But my advice, I think, is to talk to everyone. And literally, when I worked at when I was working at the camp, I just I was like a counselor, but also doing all these creative things for the kids as well too. And there was one kid that I would just always give her books to read, and then her mom found out, and she was just like, thank you so much for just talking with my daughter and like making sure she has stuff to read. And she's just like, by the way, like, I work at Turner Broadcasting, like, And she was like, was just telling me so much about, like, her daughter was telling her so much about how, like, what I was doing and all the, how much I like how much I was like adding to the camp basically. And which that then led to an informational interview. So I started talking with the mom, and she introduced me to a couple of people at Turner Broadcasting. She didn't know anyone at Cartoon Network, but it was just like a good intro for me to just like learn more about the different types of jobs that and like Turner Broadcasting and just like in interactive media as well. And then even now, in my current job, I have to network a lot. Like I have to talk to everyone, and I make it a really big point for myself when I visit development teams. So we get to visit development teams that we work with. When I visit them, I don't just interact with the leadership team because that's, I just like I hate that whole like hierarchy. Sometimes I'm like I want to talk to everyone, so I'm like I want to talk to the artist. I don't want to talk to the junior like engineer, like so I just, even if it's like I'm nervous, I just do it. I just go and just ask them like about their path, about their life. I ask them different questions and stuff like that because I really do, again, like that's where the empathy comes from. I just really want to understand people, so I really do just like networking is so crucial to finding jobs as well too. Like I got this job through networking as well too. Like I applied for it was like a scholarship for people who are out of college and that would have been in games for a little bit, and that scholarship led me to this conference, and I started networking at this conference that I went to, and then someone invited me to apply, and he spoke really highly of me to the hiring manager, and that really helped me get this position. And it's very crucial, because, especially too because a lot of jobs they offer referrals. Like you can refer somebody to a position. So if you've networked with someone and you're like, oh, by the way, I'm really interested at this position at your company, would you be willing to refer me? Like that goes a long way, because your resume is then definitely going to see the eyes of a human. So yeah, I think that's, yeah, I think that's it. Sorry.
It's helpful for you to say too that you're shy, because I think there's a I am too, actually, totally an introvert, but like if you need to, you do it.
Yeah,
Right? If you
a
need
lot of people think I'm an extrovert, like at work, and I'm like, I'm not. I like to just be, yeah. So I
Yeah, I
definitely
mean, but
understand.
if you genuinely like people, you can
Mhm.
sort of steel yourself, right? To get yourself in those kind of networking situations, and often something, maybe even make a friend out of it, and not
Yeah.
a job, but
Hmm.
that makes life better too, right? So
Definitely.
Yeah, I think informational interviews have had been huge stepping stones or foundations in my career to figure out like where do I want to go and get connections to, like sometimes it's like you just happen to be talking to the right person at the right time and there's an opportunity. A lot of times there isn't. A lot of times it's just like learning, right, about where you could go, but it opens your horizon. And I think it's all about reframing it from, because networking I think can have connotations that feel a little icky, like am I just trying to use people or something like that. But if you reframe it and think about it as like curiosity, and or even think about it as research, like as art historians we all love research and digging into questions and finding answers and discovering something new. So if you think of the talking to people about their careers in that way, maybe it'll help.
Yeah, I think as another shy person over here, it's good to kind of remind yourself how much people like to talk about themselves. And in a lot of the work that I've done, I've interviewed people because I'm writing about them, right? Um, you know, ask the right questions and just get them going, and you don't have to say much. You're just listening, which honestly it's beneficial anyway. But yeah, don't forget, people like to talk, if they're talking about themselves and the work that they do, and also people like to help other people. You know, if somebody came to me and said, hey, I'm an Emory grad, or I'm about to graduate from Emory, that little connection I would be like, yeah, I'll help you. But honestly, even if just a random person came to me and said, hey, I'm really not sure about what I'm doing, but I'm interested in this thing that you do, and I'm just curious if like I could ask you a few questions, I would absolutely talk to that person, because why not? I think I've learned even more so now that I work in an advancement department where a lot of what I do involves offering people opportunities to be helpful, mostly through giving money, but people really like to feel like they're doing something good for somebody else. And so, if you have a need in that way, like don't forget that person actually is also getting something out of that experience.
That's a great answer. You're totally right, of course, right? I mean, all of us like to feel like we're making a positive difference in the world, right? Whether it's a matter of somebody out for coffee who's interested in X, whatever you do, right? Or is a recent, Emory grad, or whatever it is. It's really, really well put. Okay. So, so I don't think, no questions have come in. Do you guys have questions for each other? It's been such a nice panel. You're all delightful. Like, I'm really sorry that you're not on campus and we can't now just go have like a really nice dinner together. But you have to let me, I mean, now you're all far flung from Atlanta, but on on that last note that we were like, please, when you come to campus, will you come find me? And I will bring you for a nice meal as a thank you. All right. Well, good. So, I mean, seriously, thank you all so much. It's like really delightful to kind of hear how you've sort of made your way in the past 11, or I'm not a math whiz, since 2014, 7 years, right? Okay. Right. But all right. So no lingering questions out there.
I have a question for Laura,
Yeah.
but I think a question just came in just now in the chat actually, so I'll wait till after.
Okay. Could you maybe talk about your individual research opportunities and how you approached involving yourselves in them? So, Christopher, are you talking about like when you're an Emory student, or kind of like beyond Emory? I guess both. Okay. um, any thoughts on that?
I can jump in about my Emory research experience where I worked with Dr. Westcoat. Was through a program that I'm not sure if it still is around. It was called SIRE, right?
Oh yeah, it still exists.
Still around? Good. Yeah. So I was like a work study student where I had a job freshman year, and then I needed to have a job second year. But then I learned about the SIRE program that could pay me to do research. So it was cool. I was excited to be able to do research in art history to work towards my degree while also being able to get my work study in. And then one thing I did actually after graduating, moving to New York, working at the Whitney Museum at a very entry-level job that was super low paying, is that I did a lot of like babysitting on the side, but I also spent my weekends like going to art museums and writing a blog. I didn't know anyone in New York when I first moved there, so I kept a blog that was just kind of my reflections on what I was thinking about and learning at the time, and that ended up being really cool because someone who became my mentor at the Whitney, she wasn't my direct supervisor, but she gave me she was like, oh, you're writing and you're writing interesting stuff, and I want to like let you write some stuff for our kids website, and then like labels for the museum. That was pretty cool. So There's also, after college, you can find opportunities to do projects for yourself that get you towards like where you want to go, or just experiment.
That's great.
I guess for me, when I was more of my research was, so because I was a joint major, I didn't have a concentration in art history. I was like free to kind of just take a little bit of everything, and but I had to do a lot of research for the purposes of the visual arts component of my major. So one of them was like like putting together a blog of just like the different materials that I was using. And my concentration was in drawing and painting for that specific part. But I was able to work with the visual arts department to move towards kind of a more digital art eventually, like kind of space. So, or interactive arts, I should say. So that I had to do a lot of research and then kind of put that together, because at the time, like I'd made like mini games like in PowerPoint and like HTML, but I never had actually like worked in a game engine to like make a game. So I had to do a lot of research and then put a lot of that in the blog as a part of my senior thesis. And a lot of that was I guess like a lot of that was just like, it was personal, like the game I was making, but I also had to document that, and then I also had to document at the same time exactly what I was learning, and then just combining both of those efforts, which was really cool. So that I ended up doing, like I said, a game for my senior thesis, and then we had an art show for the visual arts majors when my last year at Emory. So yeah, and then post Emory, like when I was at Cartoon Network and even at this job, I still have to do a lot of research on games. So mostly like seeing what is still competitive, like in the landscape out there. So if Fortnite is popular now, it might not be popular 7 years from now. Or if someone brought us a pitch and they wanted to make the next Fortnite, like it might already be too late, like that kind of thing. So I do a lot of research, even with game design choices and art choices as well too, in the game. So yeah.
I was going to say that I don't feel like I've had a really research-based career, but then I realized that's not true. I think it sounded like you were asking about like more traditional research experiences, but I feel like as a writer, but also in my day job, I need to learn about something, and I have to go, on a deep dive into a rabbit hole, and figure it out. And that's probably not what you meant, but I think that those opportunities are out there in ways that maybe you wouldn't name it as research, but it's still that same experience of needing to know something, needing to figure it out, needing to teach yourself, whether it's creative or practical.
Is that good, Christopher? Or like a little thumb? At any rate, I'll assume that it is. Yes, thank you. Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you all again. Huge thanks. And I guess we'll probably let you know where the recording is, so you can put it on. I don't know. Do people still do blogs? Or you put it on your personal websites, perhaps, or something like that. But really, like so grateful for your time, especially for a bunch of introverts. I understand, right? And Francis says, thank you. I enjoyed hearing about each of your experiences. And me too. So with that, I guess we'll sign off, and I hope you guys have a great night, and hope to see you on campus
Thank
sooner
you so
rather.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you all.